the Indominus Rex wasn't the first hybrid, and it wasn't the scariest either. Before it ever escaped its paddock, before Jurassic World even opened its gates, secret experiments were already underway. From mutated monstrosities that evolution never planned for, to genetically engineered hybrids that shattered the food chain. This is the full story of every dinosaur that man made, but God never wanted you to see. And it all starts at the very beginning, bringing me onto the most important man in the entire Jurassic saga, and also one of the most dangerous minds to have ever walked the earth. Dr. Henry Wu. You see, for him, simply bringing dinosaurs back from extinction wasn't enough. To the rest of the world, Jurassic Park was a miracle, a total breakthrough, a glimpse into a prehistoric past and a peek into the future of science. But to Wu, it was just the beginning, a foundation for something far more ambitious and far more deadly. Thus, in May of 1997, whilst InGen was cleaning up the chaos from Isla Sorna, Henry Wu quietly made history again. This time, not with dinosaurs, but with plants. He and his team engineered a completely new species, Caracosis wutansis, also known as the Wu flower, the first hybrid organism he had ever created, by combining several different unspecified plant species into one. But it wasn't just a scientific experiment, it was a test of the radical theories Wu had laid out in his book, The Next Step, an evolution of God's concepts. In it, he claimed that by combining genetic material from different species, it was possible to bring entirely new life forms into existence. And he was right. But you want to know what else has been brought into existence? Our Jurassic Park travel posters. Yes, there is still time to buy these guys. They're all made and printed at home with our team, so it's not just some dropship slop, don't worry. We worked hard to make these a reality, and so snag yourselves our very own Jurassic Park travel poster bundle whilst you still can to visit each of the most iconic locations, including our brand new Isle St. Hubert poster, featuring none other than the big man himself, Mr. Distortus. Link in the description. Well, the Wu flower stunned the world. Media outlets covered it as a scientific marvel, but one man saw something more. Simon Masrani. Just 1 year later, he would buy InGen and hand Wu limitless funding to take his theories to the next level. But no one asked what that next step really was, because Wu was no longer trying to recreate nature, he wanted to rewrite it, to design life with no boundaries, no predators, and no natural order. And from that moment forward, nature never stood a chance. The first proof of that? It was locked away, frozen, too unstable to be shown to the world. E750, aka the Scorpius Rex. This wasn't just another attraction. This wasn't built for tourists or spectacle. This was Dr. Henry Wu's first true hybrid. Created in total secrecy sometime around 2009, the Scorpius Rex was the result of Wu's earliest attempts to weaponize hybrid genetics. Its design wasn't about beauty or balance, it was about testing the limit. Pushing boundaries, seeing what life could become when you throw away the rules of evolution. However, when it breathed for the first time, everyone realised the same thing. They had gone too far. E750 wasn't just a dinosaur, it was a Frankenstein's monster, stitched together from the DNA of evolution's most notorious killers. It had the muscle mass and body shape of a Carnotaurus, the overwhelming power of a T-Rex, and the speed, precision, and lethal intelligence of a Velociraptor. But then, Wu had to go and take it even further. He spliced in tree frog DNA, giving it rapid growth, freakish healing, and the horrifying ability to reproduce asexually, despite what happened at the original Jurassic Park. And then came the final twist, scorpionfish DNA. The Scorpius Rex was armed with venomous detachable quills, spikes it could launch from its arms, neck, and tail. The venom would paralyze, or worse, kill them. And as if that wasn't enough, it could also see in infrared thanks to snake genes embedded into its code. The end result? A creature that couldn't think straight and couldn't be controlled. Roughly 26 feet long and standing over 10 feet tall, its body was a twisted silhouette of everything wrong with Wu's genetic manipulation. Its teeth were jagged and uneven, its eyes, small and glowing red, were perched high on a flat, almost deformed looking skull. It looked less like a dinosaur and more what it actually was, a living mistake. Even Simon Masrani, a man who gave Wu full control to create something incredible, was repulsed. He declared the Scorpius Rex too grotesque for public display, too unstable to ever be let loose. And well, Wu didn't even argue, especially after he was nearly killed by the creature himself. He realised the experiment had crossed a line and shut down the E750 project and placed the Scorpius into cryogenic stasis, locking it away deep beneath Jurassic World's surface in a secure lab. The plan was to study it in silence and eventually find a way to correct what went wrong, but the secret didn't stay frozen forever. Following the Jurassic World disaster, a group of Compsognathus made the error of chewing through a cable. The Scorpius Rex had defrosted and escaped. That was all it took for Isla Nublar's balance of power to completely shift. Herbivores began abandoning their feeding zones, predators grew uneasy, nature knew that something was wrong, and it didn't take long for the killing to begin. A Ceratosaurus ambushed and dragged away, 2 Ouranosauruses slain without mercy, a Gallimimus, its corpse stored in a tree like a leopard. Oh yeah, don't you worry, this ugly chap could quite easily jump and climb amongst the trees. And that was just the beginning, because the Scorpius didn't just escape, it made good use of that pesky frog DNA. It reproduced. Within days, there wasn't just one, there were 2. Even the mighty Brachiosaurus, a creature that had stood since the park's first days, fell victim during one of its chaotic rampages. A group of kids called the Nublar 6, left behind on Jurassic World, fought to survive, where they built fences, laid traps, and hid deep within the jungle. But nothing stopped that hybrid for long. Sammy was struck by a venomous quill, nearly dying from the toxin before being saved last minute by the antivenom. However, in the ruins of the old Jurassic Park Visitor Center, the 2 hybrids finally turned on each other. Their aggression was so wild, so erratic, that they couldn't even coexist. And in their final violent clash, they brought the entire building down on themselves. Both Scorpius Rex were crushed beneath the rubble, killed by the very park that created them. When Dr. Wu later returned to the island, Brooklyn told him what had happened, how the Scorpius reproduced and nearly wiped out the ecosystem. Even he hadn't predicted this, and so for the first time, he looked genuinely afraid of his own creation. Now thankfully, following the eruption of Mount Sibo, anything that remained of this disastrous creation was wiped from the face of the earth. However, despite all the warning signs, Simon Masrani and Dr. Wu wanted more hybrids, bringing me onto the Stegoceratops, a fusion of the Stegosaurus and Triceratops with additions from a beetle for armored exoskeleton plating and a snake, possibly influencing its stealth and adaptive behavior. Then there's the horns, the iconic identifiers of Ceratopsian lineage. But despite its Triceratops bloodline, the Stegoceratops skull resembles the Nasutoceratops with wider horns and a bulkier build. Now this hybrid never got its time in the spotlight. Despite being designed for the Jurassic World film, the hybrid was ultimately cut during script development, because according to the director, his own son made a crucial observation. If too many hybrids appeared alongside the Indominus Rex, the Indominus wouldn't feel as special. Thus, the Stegoceratops was demoted to being a mere background Easter egg flickering on a computer monitor inside the Hammond Creation Lab. But the Stegoceratops wasn't alone on that screen. There were 2 more hybrids. Firstly, let's talk about the unidentified Therizinosaur hybrid. Only the front half of the creature is ever visible, where we see its neck is lined with what looks like Amargasaurus spines, implying the presence of sauropod DNA. It also had what looks to be a gula pouch, which is usually used to store its food. And it's not the only hybridized enigma we see flicker on this screen, bringing me onto the unidentified Pachycephalosaur hybrid. Based on what is shown, this creature was an amalgamation of a Pachycephalosaurus known for its bone-crushing domed skull, seemingly an unknown sauropod, a cuttlefish, and a tree frog. Sound familiar? That's because it is a similar, albeit much less dangerous, genetic toolkit that our next hybrid utilizes, the Indominus Rex. Because you see, despite Jurassic World being a massive success, by 2011 the public started getting bored. Tourists wanted bigger, louder, scarier, and Simon Masrani knew it. Thus, on April 4th, 2012, the green light was given to Dr. Henry Wu to begin creating the perfect attraction, something that even the parents would get nightmares from. And from that moment forward, the Indominus Rex project was set into motion. Dr. Wu began splicing together what would become the most dangerous hybrid ever created. It all began with the foundation, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, her base genome, the skeletal blueprint, and most importantly, the power source. T-Rex DNA gave the Indominus a monstrous bite force capable of crushing concrete, steel fences, and even bulletproof glass. But Wu wanted something more, something intelligent, something tactical, and so he added the DNA of a velociraptor. This gave the Indominus high intelligence, problem-solving skills, and a chilling ability to strategize. She could test weaknesses, set traps, and make decisions on the fly. To make her even more terrifying, Wu added DNA from the Giganotosaurus. This made the Indominus even larger than a T-Rex when fully grown. Furthermore, it gave her a dominating physical presence, ensuring that no creature could rival her in size. But even that wasn't enough. Wu layered in genes from a Carnotaurus, Majungasaurus, Rugops, and others. These species added a natural armor to her body, allowing her to absorb gunfire and physical attacks. But then came the teeth. There, Wu turned to Deinosuchus, a prehistoric crocodilian, for the design. This gave the Indominus needle-like hooked teeth, not meant for slicing, but for grasping and holding. And that's why they protrude from her jaw. It meant that once her jaws closed around you, there was no escape. As for the claws, they were inspired by something far more vicious, the long forelimbs and slashing talons of a Therizinosaurus. And yet still, I can't believe I'm saying this, Wu wasn't finished. Who let Wu cook? Because then he added the genes from a cuttlefish, allowing her to camouflage herself perfectly, even becoming completely invisible to the naked eye. To adapt her to Isla Nublar's tropical climate, Wu added in that pesky tree frog DNA. But this did more than just help her survive. It gave her the ability to mask her heat signature, rendering her undetectable by infrared sensors. And then, to complete the design, Wu turned to the Pit Viper. This DNA granted the Indominus infrared vision through specialized cavities in her skull. Even worse, it gave her the ability to open her jaw like a snake nearly 90 degrees wide, or to consume anything or anyone that was unlucky enough to cross her path. With all this, Wu had created the perfect predator, smarter than anything they had ever imagined. But whilst the world saw her as a breakthrough in science, Wu deep down knew exactly what he had made. Because this wasn't just genetic engineering, this was a classified project within a classified project. What do I mean? Well, it's because Wu wasn't just working for Masrani. He had struck a deal with Vic Hoskins, head of Engine Security's division, who had one goal: weaponize the dinosaurs. And the Indominus was just a prototype for this. But when Masrani publicly announced the creation of the new hybrid, now named the Indominus Rex, the public didn't panic. Instead, they bought tickets and their own death warrant. Now, 2 Indominus Rex were originally intended to be housed in a specially designed paddock with 40-foot high walls. This contingency plan ensured that if one died, the other could still serve as the park's star attraction, but that plan didn't last long. The older Indominus cannibalized her sibling, killing the only other creature like her. And well, she didn't stop there, as the Indominus eventually disappeared from her paddock's infrared systems. And to add to the illusion, she left claw marks on the inner walls to make it appear as though she'd escaped by climbing out, similar to the velociraptors in the original Jurassic Park. However, when Owen Grady, paddock supervisor Nicholas Letting, and worker Nick Kilgore entered the paddock to investigate, they discovered that it was all a trap, and the Indominus had set herself free. As she rampaged across Nublar, the Indominus encountered the Nublar 6, freed Toro, a caged Carnotaurus, using her own Carnotaurus DNA to become the Alpha. She then ripped out her tracker, flesh and all, and waited to ambush the Asset Containment Unit. The hybrid then went on to kill a herd of Apatosauruses, leaving their bodies uneaten, indicating that she was not hunting for food, but for sport, just figuring out her place in the food chain. And spoiler, it was pretty damn high up there. She later found Owen and Claire inside the visitor center, feigning ignorance before crashing through the roof to attack. But her focus then shifted when she saw Miss Riley's helicopter armed with a machine gun. She led the aircraft to the aviary, then smashed through the dome, unleashing a swarm of pteranodons and dimorphodons into the sky, causing even more chaos. That night, she encountered Owen's raptor pack, but instead of attacking them, she communicated. Like with Toro, the Indominus used her raptor DNA to usurp Owen's role as alpha, commanding the pack to instead turn on the humans. Owen, Barry, and InGen troopers then opened fire, but it wasn't enough. Even after a rocket injured the hybrid, she still escaped. That's when the Indominus returned to Main Street for one last confrontation. The raptor pack, now friendly with Owen again, attacked. However, when Blue charged at the Indominus, she was smacked into a wall, whilst Delta and Echo tried but were easily dealt with. And so Claire released their last hope, Jurassic Park's original queen, Rexy. Together, Blue and the T-Rex fought side by side, driven to the lagoon's edge, where the Mosasaurus erupted from the water and dragged the deadly Indominus to its death. Dr. Henry Wu, however, did not like that his seemingly perfect specimen was killed, and so he started again on something even better, the ultimate dino weapon, the Indoraptor. Thus, he returned to Isla Nublar following the fall of Jurassic World. Whilst a unit entered the Mosasaur pond to retrieve a bone from the dead Indominus, Dr. Wu returned to his lab to try and find his old laptop. If he could, it would fast-track the creation of the Indoraptor from a few years to just a few months. Now, unfortunately for him, this plan was foiled by the Camp Cretaceous kids, who destroyed it to stop him creating even more monsters. All it really did, though, was delay the inevitable. The Indoraptor was subsequently designed in secret, grown in the basement of Lockwood Manor. Smaller and leaner than the Indominus, following more in the footsteps of the Scorpius. It was faster, more precise, and more terrifying. In spite of this, the Indoraptor was just a prototype weapon, a proof of concept. What made this creature so destructive was how it could be used. That's right, not trained, used. The Indoraptor could be directed by sound and visual commands. Point a laser at a target, activate a high-pitched audio cue, and the Indoraptor would attack until the victim was dealt with. It was essentially a guided missile with teeth. But the Indoraptor was far from perfect. Wu had engineered him without a moral anchor, without the capacity to bond, to imprint, or to feel. Unlike Blue, who showed signs of empathy and connection, the Indoraptor was cold, unpredictable, unhinged, and that's why Wu still needed Blue. She was the missing piece of the puzzle. However, the Indoraptor wasn't just dangerous because of what it was dangerous because it enjoyed what it did. Like its predecessor, the Indominus Rex, the Indoraptor displayed unnerving levels of intelligence and cruelty. But whilst the Indominus killed to establish dominance, the Indoraptor killed for fun. It even played with its victims before delivering the final blow. But this wasn't mindless savagery, it was learned behaviour. Unlike the Indominus, who spent her early life in isolation and may have lashed out due to emotional neglect, the Indoraptor was actively mistreated from the moment it hatched. Every part of its upbringing was designed to sharpen its killer instinct. It was never shown kindness, it was never offered a connection, it was never taught empathy, only obedience and pain. That was the key difference, and another reason as to how Owen raised an ally in Blue, whilst Wu raised a monster in the Indoraptor. In fact, during a deleted introduction scene for this creature, implied in the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom Jr. novelization, the Indoraptor was shown to be playing with the skeletal remains of a repair worker it killed, focusing particularly on the skull. You see, the creature had deliberately broken the light bulb inside its cage, tricking the unsuspecting worker into entering. Once inside, the Indoraptor struck. The moment was designed to highlight its intelligence, cruelty, and sinister sense of play. However, unfortunately, this scene was ultimately scrapped from the final cut of the film. Nonetheless, in the Grand Hall of Lockwood Manor, the Indoraptor was unveiled to a room full of billionaires and war profiteers. It wasn't for sale until someone offered $24 million, that is. From there, Mills overruled Wu's objections and accepted the offer, with Russian mobster Anton Orlov winning the bid. Luckily, Owen Grady, armed with a rogue Stigmalock, crashed the auction into chaos, putting a last-minute end to the sale. However, after the auction floor cleared, only mercenary Ken Wheatley remained. Spotting the Indoraptor sedated in its cage, he shot it twice with tranquilizers and crept inside, eager to claim a tooth for his collection. But the Indoraptor faked being sedated. The creature then waved its tail as a distraction before tearing him apart. The Indoraptor, subsequently free from his cage, then prowled the manor, slashing Claire and chasing Maisie into a bedroom. Just as he was about to strike, Owen then arrived, but the bullets barely phased the beast. In the end, on the roof, the Indoraptor cornered Owen and Maisie. However, Claire, seeing the weakened glass beneath the beast, pointed the laser at Owen, baiting it. The Indoraptor charged, crashing down through the skylight. But it didn't fall, it climbed back up. That was until Blue returned though. In one final clash, she slammed the Indoraptor through the glass, impaling it on an Agujuceratops skull. However, for each successful hybrid that we've covered so far is a mutant that was wrong in every sense of the imagination, all of which were left alone on Isle St. Hubert following the island's malfunction in 2010. The Mutadon being one such creature left behind. This was a twisted fusion of the iconic Velociraptor and a Pterodon, designed with the goal of combining aerial mobility with predatory intelligence because, I mean, sure, why not? I mean, what could actually go wrong there? One especially grotesque variant even had two heads, one resembling a raptor and the other a pterosaur. When the facility was abandoned, the Mutadons escaped and survived in the wild for 17 years. By the time humans were dumb enough to return in 2027, they had become apex predators. They could fly in short bursts and pick off prey from both the land and air, where one even ambushed and killed a velociraptor. Later, two of them hunted down the survivors at a gas station, one breaking through the ceiling to attack, and another crawling through the ventilation ducts. In the end though, the Mutadons bottled it and didn't get a kill on the group, unlike their Velociraptor cousins years prior. 1-0 to them. Same can't be said for the big man himself though, the D-Rex. The Distortus was InGen's most monstrous mistake, and it all started with a Snickers bar that sent the entire island into a catastrophic event that it would never recover from. Thus, following the facility's collapse, the D-Rex escaped its pen and became a territorial beast. The grotesque creature is twice the size of a T-Rex, with 6 limbs, 4 of which are huge and powerful, and 2 more resembling the T-Rex it was supposed to be. This forced it into a hunched gorilla-like stance with a massive bulbous skull. Attracted to light, much like Rexy was on Isla Nublar, the D-Rex made life hell for those on Isle St. Hubert, including taking the helicopter that was supposed to save them out of the sky like a chew toy. It also tore the head off Martin Krebs and nearly prevented the other survivors from reaching the dock. Nonetheless, the monster didn't seem overly intelligent, as Duncan was able to not only lure the D-Rex away from the group and into the swamp, but also managed to escape with what seemed to be relative ease and escape to safety as well. Nonetheless, this cool ass dude still rules the island, waiting for someone dumb enough to eat a Snickers near him once again. Now let me know in the comment section down below who your favourite mutant or hybrid dinosaur is. I'm a Scorpius guy myself, but I'm not gonna lie, I would have liked to have seen more of the D-Rex. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, ding that notification bell, and whilst you're here, you may as well click this video on your screen right now.